I think today we're just gonna go on a handful of showings, some really nice like luxury homes, and then like a historic home, and just try to get a lot of content. And then we're gonna try to figure out what we want to do with it. If we want to like voice over and like talk about it, or
Mm.
just do some cool reels. We're gonna have to figure out like editing and stuff. And then I think tomorrow we're going to do like a wine sit down, rapid fire, chatting about just like ourselves and how we got into the business.
Oh, I
Uh,
love that.
yeah.
Yeah, getting in the
We
habit
get
of
through
talking about
one.
your story is
Yeah.
like so important. That's one of the classes that Coach Kat has on her list of things that we can bring her in for. And like, that's a good one to always circle back to your story. What are you guys hoping to get out of class today? How do you do your listing presentations and what are you hoping to learn today?
Ooh, that's a good one. I typically have never really had to do a listing presentation. I've got some, but then I had some friends, I guess probably about it was July or August that I didn't do a listing presentation with. They called me and it was like a very casual conversation. And I ended up not getting it because they went with somebody that did a presentation, and it was a tough pill to swallow because it was a $1.5 million listing.
Oh, fluff.
So that was a big one where I was like, oh my gosh, okay, like I don't care if they're friends, like I need to do a listing presentation every time. I need to sit down and chat with them. The good thing is they ended up buying a house with me, and then they just told some friends of theirs in the same neighborhood that they wish they would have used me. And so I actually went to the neighbor's house and did a listing presentation, and they just called me yesterday and told me I got it. So that will be my biggest sale, fingers crossed.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, so that will be I think in July, and it's going to be around like 1.3, 1.4, and I'm like over the moon, excited. And
Yeah.
I used your template for the listing presentation.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Like
and definitely milk it. I mean, like if you can get into the luxury listing market and then other people start seeing your sign.
that's how I was like, oh my gosh, like I like
I
almost cried when they called me and told me I got it. I was just like, oh my gosh. So
bet.
I'm hoping just like learn a little bit more and kind of like fine tune. Just I used your template, which was amazing, and made like a little book and put it all together. So just some more tidbits since I'm not used to doing listing presentations.
Cool. What about you, Mona?
I haven't done a ton of them because most of the time it's in my sphere, right? So, and I spent a lot of time trying to generate one, and I have some stuff that I have used, but I have not pulled down your template yet, and I really think I need to do that and start learning. And that's out on the internet, right?
It is. And when I send out the recording of this class, I'll include anything that I've referenced. So it'll also be easy to download from there. So awesome.
Hey,
Okay, cool.
I just finished listening to the CMA training because I couldn't make it when it ran. I think there's one additional adjustment you might want to consider putting in your calculation, and that's for first floor master,
Mm-hmm.
because they're
For that third
they
one.
are definitely more desirable.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's hard to do them quickly, but yep. Well, thanks for going back and watching it because it seems a little out of order, but when we're talking about listing presentations and pulling comps, it's easiest if we kind of start with that and then go into kind of the
Right.
fluff. So awesome. We're all kind of on the same page. Well, you guys know how we kind of do it here. I will say I'm going to start a little granular, but because, as people hop on, I might kind of stay that route. But if it's just the three of us, then I might take it a little more high level, but I'll just kind of work through what I do. And then obviously you guys chime in or stop me at any point, and I would love to hear kind of what your thoughts are as we're going through it. So you know the deal. Oh, give me just a second to get my screen on the right page. Okay. I think it's going to be this one. Okay, can you see the listing presentation?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right. So you guys know what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about listing presentations. Obviously, there's no one size fits all. I know I said that in the email as we are talking about. A lot of times it can just be a conversation. However, no matter how formal or casual it is, it's always nice to have some sort of a rhythm to kind of fall back on. And then that way, whether we're leading it with them or whether we're going through it together during our presentation, we have a really good idea of what we're going to talk about and how. And then that way, as we're getting objections or as we're talking through the process or through comps, it's not quite as overwhelming. So I'm going to talk about how I do all of it. And then, like I said, feel free to kind of throw in some tidbits. So we've got the ideal situation. We've gotten a call or a text from a client saying that they would like to sell their home. And so anytime I get that message, the first thing I want to do is to ask them how soon they're available and get on a call with them. Really and truly, my main goal here is I want to make sure that we are booking an appointment as soon as possible. If someone is raising their hand, I'm not going to dilly-dally and ask a ton of questions. I'm just going to try to get in front of them. And I think that's the main takeaway. Even if you're familiar with the house, right? Just like getting in front of them, kind of to Bryn's point at the beginning of this, formalize the situation and kind of set a benchmark for we are beginning this process. So during that call, though, there are a few questions that I like to ask just to kind of set the stage. The first question I ask is, why are you moving, right? When we're going through kind of our LP Mama on the buy side, same thing goes on the list side. Motivation is really what we want to get at, because in all senses, that is what is going to set our timeline, right? Like we want to know what is generating this move and how urgent they are. Are they going to be the people that, regardless of whatever the market situation is, they have to move, and that is what it is? Or are they in the situation where the house just isn't quite working for them anymore? They want something bigger or smaller or elsewhere, and they're just waiting for the right situation or the right time, and they just want to understand what they're currently working with in terms of potential equity and whether it's worth selling. And so we want to kind of gauge that, and also gauge on our own level how much of a time commitment this is going to be and how much of a sell this is going to be when we're meeting with them. Are we trying to encourage them to take that route, or are they already there? So exactly to that point, we're then going to ask, what is your ideal timeline? Now, the motivation conversation very well might lead to this very easily, but I like to just ask, in an ideal world, when would you like to close on the sale of your home? And from that, I'm going to be working backwards to determine what that means in terms of potential list date, and then in terms of how soon we need to go ahead and start moving things along. Now, between all of us here today, my goal is always to get in front of them as soon as possible. I don't care if they're looking to sell at the end of this year. I want to make sure that I'm getting in front of them. And this isn't, obviously it is to secure the relationship, but more than that, it's also just to get ahead of all of the questions. My value here is to guide them through this process. And so if there are things that we can do to get their house ready, that's going to add more value in terms of potential closed price, or if there's things that they're throwing around doing updates on, like, hold on, sit tight, let's not do those yet until I've put eyes on it, make sure it will actually yield the results that you want. And so kind of working backwards from that will help set everything in motion, and also gauge the urgency of it. But then I'll be sure to ask them if they have any concerns, like what their tentative plans are, any immediate thoughts. You know, often their concerns are, how long is it going to sit on the market? Like once we activate, they might have concerns about showings and accommodating that. Maybe they work from home, or maybe they have kids. What does that look like in terms of random people being in their home? Especially if they're first time sellers, you know, we might have helped them purchase their home, but it's intimidating. I'm an agent. I wouldn't love the idea of random people walking through my home all the time. So they might have questions about that. Regarding their plans, are they planning on moving out before they list? Are they planning on living there while they list? If they need to sell before they buy, what does that look like? And I'm not going to address all of that necessarily on the call, but I'm going to at least understand what we're working with. And then maybe immediate thoughts, like I mentioned, maybe they're like, well, I know I need to paint downstairs and I need to do X, Y, and Z and and they've got some list. I'm going to kind of rein that back in and use that same script I just talked about of, well, let's talk about all of that when we're together. I don't ever want you to spend any money if it doesn't yield the results that we're hoping for. And so let's get on the same page of what those results might be. And then I'm going to finalize this phone call with saying, have you thought at all about price? Now, 9 times out of 10, they have. They've been looking on Zillow. They've been getting some mailers from Open Door. Who knows? Their neighbor across the street, whose home isn't at all comparable to theirs, likely just sold for who knows how much, right? Like, to some regard, they have. But they're absolutely going to spin that back on you and say, okay, but what do you think about price? And you're like, oh my gosh, I literally just found out you want to sell. How would I know? You know what I mean? But so I always kind of take that as a step back. That is okay. And this is the script that I tend to use, or something along these lines of, well, it's been a little bit since I've laid eyes on your property, and I'm not in the habit of talking about things I haven't seen for myself. And I want to make sure whatever comparable homes I'm looking at are going to be an accurate representation of good comps for you. So why don't we do this? You go ahead and send me some photos of your house. Just go room by room, send me a few photos of each room. No need to tidy up or clean or anything. Just gives me kind of the lay of the land and an understanding of your finishes. Send me a list of any updates or improvements that you've done. And then on my end, I'll do some research. I'll find out what homes around you are selling for. Really and truly, that's what dictates the market. And so those comps are going to be changing on a weekly basis. And so, even if I have looked at it in the past few months, those numbers very well have changed. So let me look at those, and then let's make a plan to meet at your house to discuss the process, answer any questions you have, and discuss a potential range. Now, and then I'm going to book that appointment. Now, taking a step back, I know I said it before, there's no one way, but kind of keep that in mind. Understand for yourself what your standard listing process is going to be. I was always of the mindset that they are calling me in and they're going to ask about price. And as annoying as it is, because I haven't laid eyes on the property yet, I haven't been in it yet, it's going to be hard for me to kind of circle back in there. And so I'm going to go in with as much info as I can and at least try to give an indication of the price. And once I get there, as I'm walking around, if things are dramatically different than what I'm expecting, then I'm going to say, hey, as I'm going through it, I pulled this information. This is what I was thinking based on the photos, but comps are ever changing. Let me run back and I'll send you an email with some updates. Or you take it in the process of how Brian does it in kind of a 2-part listing of, awesome, why don't I just go ahead and come on by? I need to just put eyes on your property and get a feel for the layout. And that'll be like a 10-minute visit. We'll talk about the process and really focus their time on understanding due diligence and getting the house ready and all of those things. And then I'll circle back with an accurate representation of potential numbers for you. So whatever your process is, obviously work that into your script, but this is kind of what I would tend to do. How does that kind of resonate with how you guys handle those phone calls?
Well, I too try and get to them as soon as possible, but I also try and come with at least a range, because that's one of the most important things they care about, right?
It is.
And I feel like if I show up and I can at least say, hey, homes in your area in this kind of condition are typically selling for. If I can't do that, I don't feel like I've got that I'm presenting the expertise that I should present.
110%. I totally agree. Yeah. And I mean, we can always adjust it, or we can say, well, these are, this closed 2 months ago. And like in your head, you're like, your house just doesn't look the way I thought. But like, definitely bring a range, Yeah.
And it's hard when you have to back someone off a little bit, especially if they've got their mindset on what Zillow says it is. I haven't been very successful at that a couple of times. Sometimes people are like, you just tell me what we need to do.
Mhm.
Those go really well. The ones where they're like, no, this is really worth blah, 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 then that doesn't go so well.
Yep. Totally. No, I totally agree. And I mean, exactly to that point, that's where all of that research comes in. So, yeah.
I like your idea though of having them send you pictures. That is a great idea, because then you can at least get a little closer on the range before you show up.
Right. And I mean, recognizing that that house may have sold forever ago and there's no photos on MLS to even reference, or the photos from the previous listing, they've done a ton of updates too, or they've changed paint color. So you just never know. Yeah. But as we know, the purpose of this is to book an appointment. Like I said a few minutes ago, I don't care if they're selling at the end of this year. My goal is to get in front of them ASAP. And like we talked about, because this is one of the largest financial decisions they're making. And if you're looking to sell at the end of the year, I'll bring you some general numbers on what we would be talking about if you were to list tomorrow. I know you're not, but you have a question about what your price is. We'll talk about that in general. And the more we can get used to having this type of conversation, the less daunting it will be when that time does come. But I want to put eyes on your property and let's make a plan for getting it ready to list, because there's nothing worse than knowing you had so much time to do X, Y, and Z, or even just a pre-pack. And then you get a month out from your timeline and it's incredibly overwhelming. So I try to book an appointment and get in front of them. As soon as we are done with that phone call, the first thing I am doing is I'm researching the deed. I don't mean any disrespect to anyone, but I want to make sure that they actually can sell this house. I'm going to be putting a lot of time in. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but in my mind, listings, the biggest chunk of time is in getting ready for the listing presentation and researching the property and the comps and getting it activated. After that, it's smooth sailing. So if I'm putting in all that time, I want to make sure that they actually can sell it. So I'm pretty sure all of you guys here know how to do that, but just because I'm recording it, and I know a few newer agents are going to look back and watch it, just real quick, if we're researching the deed, when you go on to the Wake County website, the easiest way to do this is pull up the property. You're going to look for the deed information and look for the book and page. You're then going to copy that information, the book and the page, go to the Register of Deeds website for that county, do a real estate search, and paste that book and page information into a search. It will then take you to the page where you can download that PDF. When we do that, we want to make sure that the name that is on that deed is the name of the person that we have been speaking with, that it is not a tenant or some totally unrelated person. We want to confirm ownership. Go ahead and download that and add it to your .loop or whatever your compliance file is. You will need it for your records. Then I'm going to go in and research the property. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this today. If you're looking to better understand how we research all of this, both in terms of this property, the subject, and the comparables, go back and watch the CMA class. But in essence, like we said, we're going to have them send us photos exactly to Mona's point so we can see, what does the carpet look like? What does the paint look like? Are there a ton of scuffs everywhere? How much staging are we going to need to do? Are they a minimalist or a maximalist? What are we working with? And I also want to get a list of any updates and improvements. What are the age of their systems? If I can find that information. If there is a previous MLS listing, I'm going to go to that. I'm going to pull the disclosures and see what the ages of that HVAC and roof and whatever may be. And if there's anything on there that I have a question about, I'm going to forward that along and say, hey, is this still accurate? Anything else you want to add? Then I'm going to get really familiar with the property. I might even tell them, hey, I'm going to drive by real quick later today. If you see me go by, just wave. I'm just getting kind of a lay of the neighborhood. But you're going to get a feel for the curb appeal. Is it in the lot? Is it a corner lot? Oh, can you guys see my screen?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, it acted like it had just started sharing, like it's been sharing. Is it a corner lot? Is the front yard sloped? Oh, that's true, Mona. The iMaps has a great resource for the deeds, and you can literally just click it and it will take you there. I knew there was a way to get to it quickly. I was like, I thought
They also have the septic permits if that's part of the property.
oh my gosh, amazing. Yes, research. Anything that is documented, we want a copy of. Amazing. Is the driveway sloped? Is the backyard fenced? Does it back to trees? Does it back directly to other houses? Or is it a commercial area? Want to see if we can get a layout idea. Like, does it have an owner's bedroom down? If it's a ranch style floor plan, is the owner suite on one side and all the other bedrooms on the other? Or are they all kind of together? Whatever the case may be. Obvious details like bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, age, and then kind of above and beyond all of the information that we would want in a long form CMA, the flooring type, downstairs and upstairs, the condition of it, the cabinets, countertops, bathrooms, updates, anything like that. We're just making a full list of. And just for a quick reference, I'm going to pull up, here's the CMA. So just things like this, anything to note, the appliance finishes, the parking situation, front porch, back porch, all those things. And then I'm going to do the same thing for comparables. We're going to pull active, pending, and closed, likely over the past 6 months, maybe a shorter time frame if we feel like the market is very rapidly changing. Like right now, we're headed into the spring market. It does seem to be changing. I don't know that I would use comps if I can help it from October, November. They're a little bit different than right now, but same type of property, similar age, style, condition. And we're going to just start going through all of those and seeing how they compare. And as I do that, I am then going to make that long form CMA that I talked about. I like to start with that so that I have an idea of how I'm going to present the information to the sellers. I'm going to compile all of that into a list. Now, for my long form CMA, I typically like to stick with 3 to 4 properties if I can help it. I might go to 5 depending on how many options there are, how varied they are, if I need to tell a certain story. But likely I'm going to use around 5 to 6 in terms of actual presentation to my client down the road. So kind of pulling some additional ones if needed. I then like to go through and rank them by how I feel they compare to the property. First and foremost, ideal situation is the exact same house, floor plan in that neighborhood, if at all possible. Then in that same neighborhood, pretty similar, but a slightly different layout. And then going further out and slightly different is kind of my scale of things. And I like to sort my information accordingly. Then I'm going to start organizing my listing presentation. Now, I have kind of a standard one. I'm going to share this with you guys. Feel free to tweak it as you see fit. You can obviously buy things like this on Etsy as well, but I like to go through and just have a page that's about me, my past sales, some client testimonials, and an outline of the process. So just for a quick reference, mine looks something like this. So I just have an about me and the company. Like we said, we've got some testimonials, and then I break down the process. You will see that the staging is my first page. I'll talk about how I explain all of this just in a few minutes, but we're just breaking down the process. It's very similar to my buyer presentation, but focused a lot more on showings and staging on the front end. And then I go into breaking down the process. I'm then going to gather all of the standard print sheets for the transaction. So if you're opening a dot loop for this given property, it's going to be that first folder that you see. These are the samples. They have sample written across the top. I just go ahead and print all of that out. I bring a copy of the blank disclosures with me. I also bring a copy of the sample offer to purchase. I also bring a document from MLS. If you go into MLS and you click documents in the upper right-hand corner, you can download an input sheet that lists any and every MLS field for a given listing. And so as you're going through the property, you can check it off if that's your process, and any other questionnaires or things of that sort that you might have. I also will bring a standard listing agreement that does not have sample written across it, filled out with as much information as I have. So I'm going to put in their names. I'm going to put in the property address and property details. I likely won't put in the list price yet, but I will be putting in my commission information. I'm not going to put in their payoff info, for example, but anything else that I can pretty well know I am going to put in there. And why do I do this? And bring the disclosures with me. Yes, I very likely will be sending both of these things digitally, but if you want to sign today when I'm in front of you, I don't want any reason that you can't do that. And so if you want to sign by paper, absolutely. I can send them the disclosures electronically, but I really prefer for them to fill them out by hand. I think it looks a lot better to the buyers. For some reason, it looks a lot more like they spent time on it and they actually disclosed as much as they could. But additionally, it's kind of harder to select all of that stuff. And so while I'm in front of them, I'll explain all of that. But again, I'm just kind of lowering the threshold for that conversion. How does this compare to what you guys have been doing so far? I know I'm still kind of going through everything, but.
I have a couple of documents that talk about preparing the house because so many they don't want to do anything to the house. And so I have a couple of documents that speak to how it makes your house more marketable, and then the key things that are problems for customers. I had one that they'd smoked in every day for 20 years, and we had to remediate for that, and it was expensive. But because I had this document that was like, that you have to do these things or people won't buy your house.
Yeah, and it's nice to have that type of stuff as a standard page so it doesn't feel like an attack or too direct. Like if it's already included in there, then this is a part of my standard process. This isn't a you and your home thing. That's a good point.
Very interestingly, in that particular case, another agent met with this same couple who I didn't know. I got this through the neighborhood. I did not know them. Went in and said, "Oh no, you don't have to do anything. We can just put on the market now." And I said, "They're floored. Are you kidding me?"
I mean, you could,
that's why I
but
got
you'll
the
see it
listing
in your
because I was
price.
honest. That's why I got the listing, because I was honest with them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. And here in just a few minutes, I'll show you how I kind of set those same expectations. But I am a huge believer in staging. It is a part of my process. If you are my seller, we are staging this house and I'm paying for it, non-negotiable. It also might be nice. This isn't something I have in mind, but I've also seen people do kind of a standard overview of their marketing processes. If there's anything specific that you do, maybe just outline that. We do, and Brian likes to use the phrase, we do everything that works and nothing that doesn't. So keep in mind here that this is one of those things where if there's anything to really stand strong on or fight for, this is not it, right? Like if your sellers feel very strongly about something, do it. Even if it, by all means, explain why it's not a part of your standard process, but if that's something that they feel strongly about, absolutely. Flyer boxes in front of the sign, right? It's a little tricky just in case it rains, then they get a little messy and we have to make sure that it stays full. I think first impressions matter. And so if someone pulls up right after it's rained and all the flyers are wet, I feel like that's a poor first impression. But if you want to do that, we certainly can. I just need you to know I'm going to leave a lot of those flyers at your house and I'm going to put that on you in terms of, and each evening go out and just take a look at them and replace them if needed. Or if they want a custom URL for their home, for example, you and I know no one is searching for an address and then going to that website and being like, well, that's what sold me, right? Everyone's looking on Zillow and other things, but if that's what they feel strongly about, do it. Brian would do custom signs for each listing. Signs are like $70. It's not too bad on the scale of things. And he'd put photos on each of them. Again, we know that that's not what's going to sell it. They're going to look up the address and see all of the photos. But all of that to say, find what works for you and listen to your sellers. This is a big decision and they might feel strongly about something. Is there anything you guys do for marketing that's kind of out of the box that you like to present to people, or anything that you've had sellers come to you with that you were like, oh, I don't know if I'll do it, and either you did or you didn't?
I have a listing coming up in a few weeks in the Glenwood, like Brooklyn neighborhood. And instead they didn't really want open houses, but they wanted something. They were like, it's for nosy neighbors. So I was like, well, how about I send a letter in Liz, my friend who's selling the house, in her name to all of her neighbors to just be like, hey, like I wanted to let you know first, I'm selling my home. If you have any friends or family that could be of interest, to let them know when they can contact my realtor. So they were really into that. So I'm doing that. And I just made a sign I'm doing, instead of, because I took Brian's idea with the pictures and I was like, well, I don't want to make a sign every time, just from environmental standpoint for me. So I was like, okay, I'll do a QR code on my sign and I have that to a link tree, and then I can just put in my active listings on that link tree. And then I also put my client testimonials and everything, so people can click on it. It goes right to my link tree. They can click on my website and schedule showings right through there, my listings and everything.
Oh, Bryn, I love that. What a creative idea. And I love the idea of having the testimonials on your link tree. Because if we're talking, especially with that luxury listing you have coming up, man, if we want to be capturing the neighbors, what better way? Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else want to drop in some tidbits? Cool. Then this is where I really spend my time with my listing presentation. My next step is to take all of that information that I've gathered and put it into a format that is easy for the sellers to understand and tells the story of what I want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of that. I typically will just screenshot the photos for all of their comparable homes, and I will take the photos that they have sent me and drop those into flyers of sorts. So similar to what you would do for a listing or for an open house, for example, I might be kind of pulling all of that. And then I'm going to go through and list all of the information. What were the days on market? How much did it sell for? How does it compare to other things? When I do that, I'm going to show you a few examples real quick. Bear with me. So this is one of the ones that I did a while ago. I deleted some of the other pages forever ago, so I apologize, it's kind of short, but this is the essence of what I typically do. So I'll have one page that is their home. I'll put all of the photos that they sent me. I'll put their address, all of their home information. I'll put the last time it closed and how much they bought it for. And then I'm going to put kind of a general breakdown of the layout of their home and the finishes. These are the things that I have noted on my end, and in essence, what I'm comparing other homes in relation to in terms of criteria. What are their floors like? What are their appliances? All those things. I'm then going to take the same information for all of the comps and plug it on in. I like to do it in the same exact format and the same order because I think it's easy for people to understand. So I'll do like entry, dining, living room, kitchen, living room again, bedroom, whatever. Like I'll kind of do the main photos that are of importance. again, taking that same information. Now at the top, I will put either how much it's closed for, or if it's pending, I'll put the current list price. Down below, the days on market, any information related to financial terms. And then I'll put my notes down at the bottom. So I'm not putting like a description of the property, I'm putting how it compares. This is the exact same floor plan as yours, except instead of a loft, they have a 3rd bedroom. They don't have carpet upstairs. They have hardwoods up. They have the exact whatever, like I'm outlining all of these things. They have upgraded their granite, or they have a brand new HVAC. That type of information is going there. I also like to color coordinate these. I know this is above and beyond, but I'm just showing you my process. If it's pending, it's one color. If it's closed, it's another color. And if it's active, it's another color. Just so at a glance, they kind of know. Then I'll keep doing that same information for all of the houses. Now, to Mona's point and to Bryn's point, this is where I'm also weaving in information that I'm using to educate them on what we are or what we are not going to be doing. We are not going to be taking some weird diagonal photos that are not dynamic at all and don't go with the flow of your house. The rest of them look decent. They're a little washed out. But what's up with this? Was it taken with an iPhone? Like, we're not going to be doing that. This also might be the time that I'm saying, oh, wow, look at these paint colors. Obviously not in this house, but man, these paint colors versus this one that doesn't. Which of these two do you like? Or wow, they didn't really spend much time staging. There's a lot of stuff on those counters. That's why staging is so important. I normally, when I'm in the home, we'll get to this in a second, but I normally am talking about these first. Before talking about the process, I'm kind of laying the groundwork for how I'm going to set the expectations once we start going through. Again, I'm going to use information on what we're not going to do. This one was one of those entry only listings. It had 2 photos. It had been on the market for 9 days, but I'm pretty sure it had had previous listing days as well. It was priced way too high for the market. You get the point. This is for sale by owner of sorts. I'm using this to explain the process. Would you buy this house with 2 photos and you can tell that this is the highest of all the comps? No, of course not. Same type of thing. Let me find. Here's one from my past when I was first getting started. Let me zoom in some. This was some amazing past clients of mine. They found me from another past client as referred. So they actually came to me as sellers, and then I helped them sell and buy. And these are the photos that they sent me. It is an adorable little home, but wow. Yeah, my girl loved some paint, and I love that for her, but I don't love that for the resale. It was like a burnt orange in the living room, green in the kitchen, orange in the bathroom, green in the master. It was, whoo, honey. It was a lot. And so what I did though was
I call that decorated early Halloween.
Yeah. But then I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the same thing. So this is a perfect example. Holy guacamole. I am using this as an example of why staging is so important. We look at this one.
Is that a box of tissues on the counter?
Mm-hmm. And hand sanitizer. And then there's this one. Which of these two is more visually appealing? Yeah, they're different prices by 15,000, but oh, honey. Right. I'm doing the same type of thing. I also am showing this to you to show that like this is how I laid these out originally versus now. Like there's always room for improvement. Don't feel like it has to be the most perfect thing. You can also go in Canva and find little templates from open house flyers, etc. I would just like to say very proudly that this is how it ended up looking. They took my advice. We painted the living room, kitchen, and owner's bedroom. We did some significant staging and it shined. So when I'm doing all of that, like I said, I'm putting it in the order that I want. Now, I also am trying to make it so that, in my opinion, their home will fall kind of in the middle top of it, if possible. Now, in this case, I felt like they fell right here. And they pretty much agreed, right? Like this one had brand new flooring. It had white cabinets installed, brand new cabinets, brand new countertops that were granite. It's a corner lot, pretty flat. Has laminate countertops, kind of standard brown cabinets, and a very sloped backyard, right? So understandably, they kind of felt they fell here. And so my goal is to put them in most similar to least similar and just kind of understand where they're going to fall so I understand what I'm telling them.
I like that you do this, Kate, because I think it's so much better to show people than tell them. So if we just sat there and I was like, you need to do this, 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 Like, it's a lot easier to like show them comparable houses and let them kind of come to that conclusion too while they're looking at it. Like, okay, yeah, like this looks way better.
Absolutely. And however you present this is totally up to you. This is just how I do it. You can easily just go into MLS and do a print plus of the 2-page agent full and a gallery view of each of the homes and do the same thing. Or go into RPR and have, pre-populate the listings that you want, but it'll pull the photos. So, but whatever the case may be, exactly to your point, we are showing them. I really want them to see the photos of the other homes and correlate that to what our plan is. Then, to Mona's point, I'm going to be taking the elephant out of the room. I am going through and I am looking at all of the third-party sites and what they are estimating the price to be. This is what they are looking at. This is how they're pricing their home. If I am not addressing this, I am vastly missing the mark. Now, to Brian's point, years ago, this was a real hard conversation to have. Now they're getting a lot more accurate. And so it actually can be an easier conversation, but whatever it is, we want to make sure we're addressing it. So in this case, I took a look at, I didn't. Okay. So the comparable homes that we did, the CMA that we did last class Tuesday, we used an example of a past client that I have. And so we ran some numbers, we did some adjustments, and in general, we kind of gave the range or ended up with the range of about 350 to 365, depending on finishes. And likely I would need to do some more research on some pulling some more comps, but that's kind of where I felt comfortable. If I look on Zillow, I see that their estimate is actually 351. So it's the very bottom of that range. That's actually good to me. In my opinion, we could probably list for a touch higher than that. I think we could end up around 365 if he was to list, but having that conversation, or if it's the vast opposite, whatever the case may be, we need to make sure we have an understanding of how we're going to address it. The other thing too is, I always like to remind people, the more you're looking at your own property on these sites, the more this is going to update. It starts to see that if you're refreshing this page, you're likely having some sort of interest and they want you to have some appeal. Now, obviously, a few years ago, Zillow was buying up properties and so they wanted this to look whatever way they wanted to tell the story to motivate you to sell and likely to them. Without that, I feel that this isn't quite as skewed, but I like to pull all of that information and put it on a sheet just to kind of address everything. And I just include a little phrase, although these sites do not determine the property values in any way, they tend to provide a good benchmark for how we feel and what the public is seeing. How do you guys address those?
It depends on the property. Where I am up here in North Raleigh, if you've been in the house a long time, Zillow is very far off. But if it's a property that is in an area that gets reasonable turnover, sometimes it kind of provides a good foundation, kind of the same range.
That's true.
Just depends on how good the data is.
And again, we don't need to spend too much time talking about it when we're in front of them, but we do want to have it. Then I'm going to pull a CMA. I probably will do one fast one for the summary, like the quick summary in MLS. I'll just take a screenshot of it and then I'll download that document, the long form CMA. And then I normally just have a little frame that I've designed in Canva and I just plop those screenshots in there. It's the same information, it just looks formalized. Depending on how confident I feel, I may also do a customized estimated seller net sheet. We have these in on our backend website, but basically we're taking the information for what they could potentially list for or get it sold for, what their payoff is, and then all of their fees that they could expect and how much they likely will make at the end. I might bring this with me, I might not, but again, I have kind of a frame that I've designed in Canva so that it looks nice and formal. Normally, if I'm bringing these with me, I'll bring 2 or 3 of them. And if I'm doing obviously I'm bringing a range, I'll do it for different parts of the range. Obviously, if we go up 10K in list price, you're getting 10K more, but I just want to put into writing that these are the different ones so that I'm not providing one sheet and that they can say, well, you told me it would sell for this much. No, I provided ranges for things. You can always though follow up on your appointment and say, all right, now that we finalized a plan, I'll send you a copy of this. I'll also send you a copy of it once we go under contract with an updated version of whatever our current numbers are. and adding that, keep clicking that instead of present, and adding that again to our file. Then we're going to go on our listing appointment. All of that was our prep work. I'm putting it in a folder. I do the same type of thing I do for my buyer consultations. On the left side are the documents, on the right side are my resources that I've created and brought with us. Then I'm going to go in, and I typically will just set my stuff on the counter and have the sellers give me a tour. This is the time where I'm evaluating the property. I'm making a note of all of the things that I'm going to put into MLS. I'm making note of the flooring, especially in random places like bathrooms. It's very easy to forget, man, was that laminate or was that actually tile? Right? Little things like that I'm kind of making a note of. I'm also making a note of how this property actually compares to what I thought it would be. And do I need to make any tweaks in terms of how I was planning on having this conversation with these sellers in just a few minutes? Do I need to say, oh, well, I might need to say, well, I thought X, Y, and Z, or we need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm making a note of all of these things. I might also be bringing my MLS out input sheet and kind of checking things off as I go. I'm also using this to gauge any concerns from the sellers, anything they might have been talking about doing updates on, they'll be pointing it out. Any updates they already have done and making sure they're showing me. I'm also walking the outside of the property and looking at the crawl space. Again, we're noting anything that we need. We also want to compare how this, or we want to evaluate how this compares to what our expectations were going into this appointment and our upcoming conversation. Then we're going to sit down at the table. Now, I say this for a reason. We are not sitting down on the couch. This is not casual. To Bryn's point, we are setting the stage for, I am a real estate professional. I'm very good at what I do. I am very personable, but this is one of the largest financial decisions you will be making. And I want you to know I take that seriously. So let's sit down together and let's go through all of this. And I have a lot of papers. Let's lay it out. When I sit down, the first thing I'm going to do is say, thank you so much for calling me. I know this is a big decision. I really appreciate the opportunity. And again, I'm going to say that scripted, like, I know this is something I do every day, but I recognize this is not an everyday decision for you. So I want to make sure that we have a really good understanding of the process. I want to make sure that we're going to go over the comparables, but I want to make sure I'm addressing any questions or concerns that you have during this. I'm a feedback-based person. I'm always going to try to be proactive in sharing anything I know with you, but I can't read your mind. So at any point, if there's something that you have a question about or you have a concern about, please let me know. I would love to be sure to address any of that. As we're getting started though, before I dive into everything I brought with me, I would love to just know, have you bought, well, obviously you bought before, but have you sold before? If I don't know that information. If they bought this home with another agent, I'm going to say, is there any feedback from either when you purchased this home or from when you've sold previously? Is there any feedback you wish you could give that agent if you had a chance to speak with them today? Because what I want to know is, what are their pain points? Where have they been burned? Gosh, I wish I could give the advice, or I wish I could tell my last agent, like, where did you go once I went under contract? Everything went well, but then as soon as I was under contract, I never heard from them. I felt like they just wanted my money. Or, the last person that came in here said I needed to do all of these things, and like, how rude. This is my home. And in your head, you're like, oh, I'm going to make the same advice. So we need to figure out how we're going to say this. Whatever the case may be, I'm kind of setting a benchmark for those things. But also, I'm leading by example. I just told them that I'm feedback-based and I'm asking them for feedback from other things. I want to set myself up for success. These people obviously need to be really communicated with, or whatever. Have you guys had this conversation with anyone before? Bryn, what were their concerns from past situations? Or what did they say?
A lot of it was a communication, that they felt the communication fell off, or they didn't communicate in the ways that I think they wanted to be communicated with. So that became one of my big questions as well whenever I talk to somebody is, how do you want to be communicated with? And so I think that's really huge, and kind of setting that up front. So, going forward, like, these people don't want a text from me or to just text all the time. Like, set an appointment and get on a phone call with them. So that was a huge one for a lot of my clients that I have now.
Absolutely. Great point. Asking that with any client is so huge. Then I'm going to pull out all of that stuff that we talked about. Mostly though, I am likely going to start with the CMA and the comps, because again, to Mona's point, like, yes, we are just walking in. Yes, we probably haven't been here before, but this is the reason they're bringing us in. They want to know numbers, and they want to know how these numbers compare to their thoughts. They want to know how these numbers compare to potentially other people, unfortunately. And I'm going to go through all of it. I'm going to say, all right, so here's how it works. I normally will start with those visuals, the little, I call them pool sheets, the little 1-page or 2-page sheets that have all the photos. I'm going to lay all of that out in front of him. I know this sounds terrible, but I'm kind of a paper person. I normally will bring 2 packets. I'll bring one for them and one for myself, because I don't want to be leaning over the table and reading something upside down or hoping I remember what I wrote there. I'm going to have them do that. I'm going to kind of lay theirs out. I'm going to have mine in front of me. I'll be like, this is our first one. It was listed for this amount. You can tell they didn't do any staging. There's stuff everywhere. One of the biggest rules in listing your home is to take everything off the counters. We're going to put down the toilet seats. We're going to pre-pack a ton of stuff. We're going to talk with the stager to make sure that even the bigger things, the furniture in the room is laid out in a way that maximizes the space. I'm going to kind of use all of those as benchmarks. This one has updated countertops. This one, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm going through all of these things one by one. Then I normally, let me see if I put this in here. I normally will then rearrange it. I have practiced this in advance. Please note, I will then normally rearrange it because originally they're in the order of most similar to least similar in terms of layout often. I'm then going to kind of rearrange it by lowest price to highest price. And normally theirs is going to fall somewhere in the middle, upper middle, if I can help it. But I'm using that as a benchmark. Again, making sure the story makes sense before I go into this appointment. But I'm normally trying to make sure that they agree that we are right around here. And they recognize these above them. If they do things that will get them closer to that, we might have the potential to do more. But I'm letting this unstaged house versus this beautiful, immaculate home speak for itself. Then I'm saying, okay, so we see this range of numbers. I think we fall around here in terms of potential closed price. Agreed. Now, here's how we break this down. I'm going to pull out my long form CMA and say, now I go through all of the comparable homes. Those are the homes that are around you. This is how we figure out what the market is saying about your home. Your home is worth as much as someone is willing to pay for it. That is the value of your home. Until we get it listed, until we're under contract, we won't know exactly what that number is. And so our best estimate is going to be using the homes around you. But they're not all the same. And so I'm going to be going through and making adjustments for finishes that might be either superior or inferior to yours to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. Namely, the biggest adjustment I'm going to make is in regards to square footage, because 200 square feet might not seem like much, but if we tally that up in terms of an adjustment in price, that's easily $10,000. And so I'll kind of go through all of that and I'll say, based on all of this, this is where I feel our range is. Do you agree? That kind of matches exactly that range that we see. We're going to talk about potential price ranges. As I'm doing that, I am also taking an opportunity to talk about their potential buyer and to talk about how people shop. I'm talking about price tiers. So if someone, like that other one I was showing you, the Holding Village home from a few years ago, if someone is in that situation where we've got like, they're in between 350 and 400, they could very easily say, well, I want to list for 4. Yeah, but that's a very specific buyer pool. People that are looking for 4 and above are likely starting their search around 380, but likely 4. They shop in price tiers. And so if we go down to 375, we're capturing the people that are shopping at 350 and we're capturing the people that are shopping at 4. Whereas if we start further, right? Like I'm explaining those things. If they've got a 2-bedroom house, I'm explaining who their buyer is as opposed to a 3-bedroom. I just think it's important for us to have some expectations. I'm not going into anything fair housing related, but you know, if you have a little condo off of Tryon, it's very possible you're going to get a handful of investor offers. Some of them might be quite insulting. That is okay. We will ignore them, but just know that that is a likely buyer pool for you. In addition to maybe parents that are, or maybe people that are purchasing it for students that already live nearby, or they simply need a home and this is their first time buyer price point, whatever the case may be. I'm going through all of those things. If I have brought the estimated net sheet with me, I will go over it. I do normally bring a few of them with me if I can help it, just because they're going to have questions about commission and what their bottom line will be. It's a good reminder as well that they only owe so much on the property. So let's see, after we talk about this list price and my commissions, like what are you ending up with? It's also a good time to talk about potential repair negotiations and what that will look like. Then I'm going to go over all the boring stuff. I'm going to talk about the documents. I'm going to talk about the sales process. That's where that packet really comes into play. And kind of remember, my next slide, no one wants to hear you talk for 45 minutes to an hour straight. I can speak to that. That's like what we're working with right now, right? Like you kind of start to be like, all right, I've reached my max. That's enough. So make this a conversation. They don't want to get up. They don't want someone that just walks in and kind of feels entitled and is like, I know what I'm talking about. That's all that matters. So when I'm going through this, I will pull out my sheet and like, you guys were referred to me by a friend. So obviously, you know, I come highly recommended, but in here, you'll find some more information about me and some past client reviews. The stuff that you need to know is I'm born and raised in this area. I've known it for a long time, which means I know this market very well. I'm a full-time real estate professional. I take my job very seriously. And I take my client relationships very seriously. The thing that is most common in all of my testimonials and reviews is that I'm professional and knowledgeable, and I'm here to answer any questions. I want you to know that I really do mean that. And so at any point, if you have questions, feel free to stop me. I want to make sure we're on the same page. I'm going to talk about why we're here today. We're going to go over numbers. We're going to talk about staging your home. We're going to make a plan for what we need to do from now to activation, so we can all get on the same page and maximize the amount of money that you will get for your property. Then we're going to talk about the process. First and foremost, first thing that we need to know, or we want to go over, is staging your home. This is a non-negotiable. This is the difference between getting the most for your property or just getting a decent amount. Because as much as we hate to say it, first impressions matter. And just like any other product that you are buying online, your people are going to be seeing it online first. So any other product, even shoes, right? We're taking the picture from the right angle with the best lighting, with nothing on the surface that it's being taken on, right? Like all of those things. The same thing goes for your largest financial asset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a stager. This is someone that I work with on every single listing that I do. And she's going to come in and go through every single room that you have. It will take a while. It'll take 2 to 3 hours. But don't worry, you're just there to kind of soak it in and absorb. She will make a list for every single room of exactly what you need to do. This is kind of our dream scenario list. So don't be overwhelmed by it. If you can do all of it, amazing. But my advice would be just kind of as you have time, tick off a few things here and there so it doesn't seem as daunting. But very often this is going to be removing rugs. We might even rearrange the furniture to make sure that it maximizes the space. Certain angles will really show the room better than others. We're likely going to really be pre-packing. Like I said, anything on the counters we want to be taking down, even soap dispensers. All of that needs to just, if you need to, just stick it under the cabinets. I don't care, but we need it off the countertops, and we'll kind of go room by room. The other main thing is we want light, bright, airy linens, at least on the owner's bedroom. I can bring in some staging materials, but I need you guys to pre-pack and do kind of the bulk of things. I am a huge believer, and I say this to my buyers, so I know other buyers feel this way. The way that you see the things that are right in front of you says a lot about how they took care of the things that you can't see. So if we are of the mindset that we're going to leave all of our cosmetics and the toilet seat up and the shower curtain back and all of our personal belongings everywhere, are we the type of people that also got our HVAC serviced just for the sake of making sure it's serviced every 6 months? Probably not, but we want to convey that we were. So we need to be doing everything we can. And again, having those pull sheets where you can very well see the people that didn't stage versus the people that did, and there's a $20,000 to $15,000 difference there, that adds up quickly. I also like them to know that this is, do you pay to have it staged once empty? Great question, Mona. I'm going to get to that in just a second, because what I was about to say is I do pay for this in my listings. It's totally up to you. But because this is a non-negotiable to me, I am paying to have it staged. I'm paying to have someone come in. Now, when I say staging, what I'm really referencing is someone to come through and make this list. To Mona's point, if it's empty, what's the point? It depends on the condition of the home. If it is one, to your point, where it's been smoked in a lot, or there's just a really heavy dog smell, or if the paint is really bad or the carpet's really bad, if there are some things that are pretty big ticket items that they really need to do in order to get the most for their money, I will bring a stager in. Just because I also will preface this conversation by saying stagers are very similar to designers. However, they are completely separate. Stagers are fully trained to make sure that any advice they give you is going to be something that yields results in your closed price. So they're only going to be doing the big ticket things, and they will rank the priority of things. So if your whole house needs paint and that's not in the budget, they're going to only tell you to do the living room, kitchen, and owner's bedroom. They're never going to give you advice to paint just that one spare bedroom. And so it kind of gives you a benchmark. I do bring them in for that, for both the staging and for when it's empty, if there's big things, because I want to save my relationship, especially if this is someone I don't know, or even if it is a friend, it can be a little awkward. Understandably, people love their homes and they don't want to hear that it's not the best. And so I like them to hear from third parties because it helps save that relationship, and because they're not only hearing these things from me. And normally if I walk into a house, when I call the stager to book the appointment, I'm like, yo, this carpet really needs to be replaced. Can you really push for that? Like, they already will kind of do that. But in my opinion, it's nice to have a third party. And I just say, I use this for every single property. I can show you before and afters of them. I stand by what she says. And so anything that she's saying, I will pretty well agree on. I'll tell you right now, my main concerns are going to be the carpet and probably some paint touch-ups. And then I might do a little script on that, but then I'm leaving it up to the stager to kind of close that. So yes, now if it is a nice home and it's empty, it depends on the price point. If it's 5 or under, maybe 6 and under, I'm just going in with some light staging. I like to shop. So as I decorate things and as I rotate stuff out of my own house, I have a shelf that I will add excess staging stuff to. So I have some like bright white towels, some, I don't know, little random decor, some fake plants and things like that, some pictures that I can hang on the wall. I'll bring random stuff like that to stage the home. If it is like 7 or 8 and above, I will have the conversation around considering having it professionally staged. If it's kind of on the lower end of that or lower, I can have it virtually staged. If it's a luxury listing though, and it's empty, I would highly recommend having it professionally staged. It can get quite pricey. It's per square foot, but especially with larger homes, it can be hard to understand the livability of the home and like how it actually flows, especially if there's a ton of rooms, like 2 living rooms, that people can be like, I just don't know if I need this much space. But if you have it staged so that one is kind of like more of a kids room and an office, and the other is like your cozy living room or something, it makes a lot more sense. And same thing with the owner's bedroom. So have that conversation and then maybe just say that like it's up to them to stage it, but that's what you recommend, or say that they pay for it up front and it's reduced from your commissions. I don't know. It just depends on how pricey it is, but it would depend on the situation. Does that answer enough? Okay. Then I am hitting that again. Once you get that list, you are working through it, and we're going to be doing all those things that she said. Then we are going to do photos and measurements. I want to be doing these as soon as you feel ready, but I don't want to rush it. And I need you to know that I need about 2 days prior to listing to get those photos back. My dream scenario is to have a day or 2 to get everything into MLS, and it will take me 2 days normally to get photos back. So ideally about 4 days to 5 days before listing, we need to have all of this done. But if you have your home completely ready and they're the type of people where you walk in and you're like, oh my gosh, I have nothing to advise, like this looks beautiful and you must live this way, wild, then we'll get photos as soon as possible so that I can start making a plan for marketing it. Just kind of depends on the situation. But then I'll tell them the plan for signs. I can only put it out that morning or a day in advance. So that's what we're going to do. We'll talk about coming soon, whether we should or whether we shouldn't. I normally don't really do it coming soon anymore, especially since it starts counting days on market. It doesn't even push to other third-party sites. I don't know if it's worth it, but whatever your script is, whatever your process is, have something to explain it. Then I'm going to talk about activations. So we're going to be doing all of this work to get your home ready. We're going to be talking a lot. Right before we activate, I'm probably going to reevaluate those comps and just make sure nothing else is sold. That will kind of update the information that we have in terms of potential price. And then we're going to activate it. Now, I'm going to use my knowledge of what their plan is for staying in the home or not, on what I'm going to tell them. If they are not going to be in the home, then I'm just going to say I'm going to set you up through MLS that anytime we get a showing, you'll get a notification. There's nothing needed on your behalf to go ahead and confirm that. It's just a courtesy notice. As soon as these people request it, it's received and confirmed. But you'll see that come through, and as I have feedback, I'll provide it back to you. Or I'm going to say, you guys are living in the home, so I'm going to put it as appointment only, which means that once an appointment is requested, you as the seller will get a text or a phone call or an email, whatever, and you'll have to respond to confirm it. I need you guys to be confirming as many appointments as possible. If there are any times that you cannot accommodate, that's okay. But if you say no, I need you to immediately text me or call me and tell me what the alternative access time is. I cannot sell your home if you don't let people in it. This is also where the conversation comes into play of who is going to be in the home regularly. Are you working from home? Can you work elsewhere for the day? I had to learn this the hard way. I had this exact house right here. It was kind of heading into COVID, so it wasn't quite as crazy as it had been, or as it was getting to be. And I really thought that their home was going to sell in a weekend, and they went out of town and it didn't. And they came back into town, and he was working from home, and he was like an IT programmer. He had to have very specific security measures in place for his computer and like his meetings and stuff. And so he could not go work from a library or a coffee shop or anything like that. And so I couldn't do showing during the day, but then the mom was going to be home and they had to put the baby down. So they were then telling me that they had like a 2-hour window. And I start panicking internally because I'm like, when am I supposed to even get anyone in the door? Like, why did you not tell me this? And somehow it's my, like, are there dogs in the home that we need to coordinate? Whatever the case may be, make a plan for it and have a script for it. And make a plan for how things are going to change depending on how long it sits. All right. As the showings begin, I may receive feedback. As I get that feedback, I will let you know. Unfortunately, some people don't give feedback. I will absolutely push, but just know that sometimes no feedback is our feedback. If they are interested, they will be writing an offer. But regardless, I'm going to be following up with people and I'll keep you in the loop. If there's any feedback that I continue to hear, I will let you know. And just know that I won't be stopping by every day, but occasionally, especially if it's vacant, occasionally I will be popping by just to make sure everything looks good. I will also use this as time, if the home is vacant, to set expectations on what they want the home to look like at the end of any given day. I had this conversation with my last listing because it was vacant. I think that homes show best with the blinds up halfway to the sash and open. I often will leave the lights on just because then when someone walks in, they're not looking for light switches everywhere. They can just kind of come on in. But at the end of the day, if the lights are all still on, then people driving by can look in and see that it's vacant. How do you feel about that? I can go by occasionally, but I cannot promise you I can go by every evening to close them. What would you like to do? They're like, honestly, we would rather just leave it. We're okay with that. I'm like, okay, but make sure you're having that conversation, because if you don't, and they aren't staying there and they randomly show up and they're like, everyone can see in our house, this is not okay. You want to make sure you've had this conversation. I'm then going to talk about how we're going to review offers. So as we're getting offers, I will let you know. It is my job to send you a paper copy of them. So as soon as I get them, I will be forwarding those to you, but just know we'll make a plan to review everything together. Me sending it to you is just kind of a formal confirmation that we've gotten it. As we get these though, I will put it into a spreadsheet if we get multiple offers to break down all of the terms and make sure we're comparing apples to apples, and we can go through all of that together. I'll then make sure that I'm going over the entire process. We'll talk about going under contract. We'll talk about getting that due diligence check and the fact that they do need to cash it. We'll talk about how the due diligence process goes and making sure that they know that they have to accept the appointments for inspections and appraisal and what that means and what they could potentially ask for in terms of repairs or not, and what our potential responses are. Yes, no, we'll meet you in the middle. We'll go through all of that. Then I'm going to talk about closing. I'm going to set expectations for what's going to stay in the home, what's not going to stay. I'm also going to talk about their moving plan when they need to be out of the house. I also will use this as a time to talk about the condition of it. Like, please do a nice cleaning when you're moving out. Really and truly, according to the contract, broom clean is all that's required. But who wants to walk in and feel like before they even move things in, they have to clean? So if you're a detailed cleaner, by all means, go for it. If you're not, though, let's hire a professional. Okay, ran through all of that, but I know it's a lot. How does that kind of compare to what you guys do? Or are there any questions you have about any of this or how you review it? Cool. Anything else relating to showings and setting expectations about that? One thing, I know I have this, I don't remember if it's in this class or the next one. I also will use this as a time we're having uncomfortable conversations, whether we like it or not. There are certain things that we need to make sure that we absolutely pre-pack or get out of the home. Are there any firearms in the home? Where are they? Are they in a gun safe? You need to have the firearm removed before any showings begin. If it's in a gun safe, by all means, but other than that, it's got to be out of the house. Your stager will mention this, but I want to make sure I've said it. That knife block on the counter, that needs to be put away. Anything else like that, I am making sure that I address up front. Okay. Then I'm going to finish with our next steps. Okay, wonderful. Do you guys have any questions? We went over a lot. It's a lot to absorb. Okay, here's our next step. Really and truly, we're bringing the stager out. If they need a list ASAP, I'm saying we're bringing the stager out. You've got a lot to do in a weekend, but I believe in you. You can do it. Let me know what resources you need. If you need a junk hauling company, I've got you. If you need a painter or carpet company, I've got you, right? Like we're making a plan. Or if there are ways out, again, I'm reminding them, use this as your dream scenario list. Just chip it off one at a time, but I want you to have as much time as possible to do this. So please go ahead and schedule this as soon as possible. She will type up a list for you room by room. You just need to attend the appointment and listen. Also, I'm going to send you the documents. During that time, I'm going to go over the residential property disclosure and how to fill that out. Same with mineral oil and gas. I'll send you a copy of the listing agreement, and I'll send you a copy of the updated estimated seller net sheet based on that list price that we discussed. I'm going to get your signatures on both of those. And then I'm going to plan to come back to the house. I'm going to schedule photos. I'll let you know when that is. But before photos, a day or two in advance, I'm going to come back to the house and make sure everything looks the way that we thought it would and that I have an understanding of how things look. I'm also going to add any random staging details that might be needed. And I'm going to pick up those disclosures from you. So, fill those out over the next few days and finish up that updates list that we had talked about if they haven't already. You're going to do all that staging. We're going to get those photos and then we're going to make a final plan and I'm going to activate it. So in the meantime, I'm going to start putting everything into MLS. And as we get closer, I'll send you drafts of that. Once we are closer to activation, I'll send you a copy of it for your approval. Your signature on that just says that everything looks good and you're ready for me to activate on the agreed upon date and time. I don't think I mentioned this in our CMA class, but make sure you also look at the past sales. I think I already closed that tab. But when you're on any given Wake County property, up at the top, it'll have like buildings, notes, things like that. Make sure there will be a section that says sales. If you click on that, it will show you the recent sales right in that area. Make sure you are looking at that, especially when you're doing the comps, because something could have sold off market or friend to friend and we could totally miss it. And 9 times out of 10, if that has happened, that is the house that they're going to reference. And although you have all these papers in front of you, they're going to be like, well, what about that one that sold for $50K higher than what we're talking about here? And you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? You want to be prepared and say, yeah, I actually saw that. Looks like it was off market. I reached out to X, Y, and Z. Like, I don't know, you might not even have any info, but at least be sure that you know that it happened. All right, I think that's pretty much it. I know we went over a lot today. Basically, our next class will pick up where this one ends in that we are planning for activation. And so next class on Tuesday, we're going to be going through activation, through showings, and then kind of all the way on through closing. So that's kind of the short and sweet. I don't think I mentioned it, but I think it goes without saying, if I feel that strongly about stagers, I also feel very strongly about photos. I am very particular about them. Please don't be the person that takes photos on your own or with an iPhone unless you are a professional photographer. Hire someone to do it. It makes a huge difference. All right, y'all. Any questions?
I just want to say, like, it's quite a bit of work to, get a listing and put it together. I mean, I just been working with buyers, so I don't have any listings yet, but it definitely seems a little bit overwhelming, especially when you don't have that experience.
Oh, absolutely. I was terrified going into my first listing
Can
appointment.
you come with me on my first one?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing though, is just, you can always practice. I mean, I will say it is quite time consuming, right? But maybe just do one for your own house. If you're already running a long form CMA, just kind of practice, be like, hey, hey, hubby, wife, whatever, friend, will you sit down and pretend to be my seller? I say that all the time, but like, I'm a big scripting person. It sounds cheesy, but we would practice for a job interview. If we were like in corporate America, this is our job. This is our job interview. So just practice it, but don't be intimidated. It's just a conversation. And at the least, you just got this paper, these papers in front of you that kind of do the talking. You're just relating to them. But also, shameless plug, Marta has a carpet company. So if you need any listings to have carpet replaced, just got you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You want to drop your company info in the chat? And then I know most of you guys here know me, but just if you don't, I'm going to put my info in the chat. My name is Kate Studman. I'm the Director of Agent Development here at Choice Residential. So we run trainings like these that are open to all agents because we believe that the more educated we can be as agents, then the better served our clients will be as a community. So if you have any questions, let me know. If you want to chat one-on-one, I am always available. Or if you want to find out more about what we have to offer here at Choice, I would love to chat. But thank you guys for your time today. I appreciate it. And thanks to everyone that chimed in, especially Mona and Bryn. Thanks for sharing your advice, y'all. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Kate.
Bye, y'all. Have a great day.